Hello.
Hello.
We're not outside, we're in the cabin. Do you know what? I don't think we've done an outside one for a while. I think we're getting soft.
Well, we haven't done one in the cabin for a long time either. This is like winter.
Do you think we're grading ourselves? We're doing graded exposure back into... Because it's not like we haven't been outside, but it's very different sitting down.
This is the thing.
Outside.
Sitting down.
Last time
we did do one outside, I was cold for a long time afterwards and had to stand in the shower for a very, very long time. And you just feel, the temperature's just dropped, hasn't it? And it hasn't. You've just sat on your ass for 40 minutes, waffling on. Babs.
But otherwise, the weather's been very nice this week and it's about to get horrible.
It is. Massive storm on Sunday, but yesterday...
60 mile an hour winds we're getting.
Yeah.
60 miles an hour.
Focus on the positive, man. Like, Imbolc has happened, and yesterday was properly like the first day of spring. It was so amazing. The sun was shining. Everybody was full of beans. Everyone was full of energy.
It was because the weather was still. So you could focus on other needs.
Yeah.
It's like, I've said before, Maslow, I'm not on board with it, but you didn't have to focus on, personally, I need to keep warm. And then your instructor level of like, okay, I need to make sure the kids are warm and have eaten enough and aren't like, jumping in the puddles at 9:30 and soaking their clothes
without their waterproof trousers.
And waterproofs and everything, fine. But it just takes that level of maybe that component of being outside, and you go, park that. There's no wind. There's just sunshine.
Yeah.
Everybody's chilled.
Everyone was so chilled, so you could just go, should we do this? Everyone's like, yeah. Nobody was like, no, I don't want to do that because
But that was also a sign of we've been with that group for a while, and so admittedly a couple of new people have joined, but that group I think is a testament to why the FSA says that it needs to be long term, because if we had just met all those kids, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did yesterday.
Which was to go on a long ramble and spot loads of spring flowers and look at snowdrops in real detail.
Just went for a walk round Devon.
Yeah.
Just see what's out there. Yeah. And it was really nice to go with them, and they were, finding some footpath signs and going, should we go this way? And we're going, yep. It was, there's an Aborigine thing called a walkabout, where you intentionally walk with no direction, and Tristan was talking about, getting half lost, and I think it's that thing of like, actually being present enough to go, well, as long as we know how to get back, which we do, it's fine. It's not an issue.
We should do that again in a different direction.
We should
put more on them in terms of like, where is home? Where is the woods?
I've asked them before, and they don't know. They didn't know, and it made them a little bit uncomfortable to not know that. So I kind of didn't bring it up last time because it brought up some anxiety of like, I don't know the way home. Oh, we did, but they didn't. It did make me think as well. Did you read Nick Elvey's thing about her mini adventures?
Oh yeah,
which was really nice.
We really want to get Nick Elvey on the podcast. We will at one point, I'm sure.
At some point.
She's very busy.
Yeah.
But look her up if you don't know her. Miss Elvey's Curious School of the World. We've talked about an article she wrote about kind of privilege and financial circumstances and forest school and kit and all that kind of stuff.
But she wrote one about mini adventures, and actually the sort of it wasn't really about the adventure. It was about her sort of internal. Anyway, I won't.
She's doing a PhD on it now.
Yeah, go and look up Nick's stuff because it's very good.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.
But that's not what we're talking about.
No.
Today.
None of that.
We are talking about in true, I feel like Forest School podcast fashion. I read something a few days ago, and you have read it 15 seconds ago?
Yeah.
So I've got the broad overview of like, I've sort of digested this.
Yeah.
But you made notes because you're a diligent student.
Yes. We read an article which was published in The Guardian on the 28th of January by Wendy Berliner, who's just written a book with someone called Judith Judd. I believe they're American. And the book is called How to Succeed at School, Whatever Every Parent Should Know. And the article is called... Can you remember this?
Oh, it's about asking questions.
Schools are killing curiosity. Why we need to stop telling children to shut up and learn. Pupils who ask lots of questions get better results, especially those from poorer homes.
can I tell you this is a wider context thing?
Yeah.
But I, as I think a lot of British people do, have a real have class worry or class anxiety, and so I tried really hard to find the same, because sometimes you find this thing and you go, it's the same article, the Guardian's written it, the Times has written it,
It's basically
whatever.
a PR stunt by
It's a
the
PR
publishing company.
And it's all, been churned out in the same way but in different places.
Yeah.
And I've tried really hard, so I was like, the Guardian is quite lefty.
Yeah.
And it was already a podcast where we're talking academically, couldn't find anything in the right news.
It's probably because the Guardian's already got it, so they're not interested in it.
Maybe, but I just thought it was interesting that it's a topic that focuses on the impact in lower income families, but that isn't in news directed at lower income families. I would not say the Guardian is pitching themselves at. I mean, maybe I'm talking out my arse here, but anyway, I thought was interesting that there was in the lefty news.
Well, the righty news is more along the Michael Gove style of thinking, which is shut up and listen and learn.
Well, that's what I mean.
Dead
That's
people.
interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, the article as written is. Do you want to talk broadly about what it's about, or do you want to go into a specific? Because it kind of wandered, didn't it?
Go on then.
I think. Well, the first bit that I remember was broadly talking about curiosity and questioning, and that for people in the UK, we've just moved. Ofsted is now looking for, was it a broad and balanced curriculum? So they're attempting to move away from the scores and academic results, and they want to see a wide range of things. And so they were talking about children asking questions, and they had some really good. When you were reading it, because you read it while I was setting all the podcasting stuff up, and I heard you sort of making a few noises. And I think it was. I'm going to take a guess at. Was it the rate at questions?
Yeah.
Which was.
I laughed out
Do you
loud.
want to say what they were?
107 questions an hour, which is the average number for children between 14 months and 5 years. I think.
Yeah.
Let me just double check that.
Yeah, it's that kind of age, because they tend to talk about
the average.
And the top rate was something.
3 questions a minute. It was the top one child at his peak was asking 3 questions a minute.
My little boy could do that in 15 seconds.
We've definitely had a kid here who did that.
Yeah, who just.
What? But why?
But what? But then there's a level to that, isn't there, where there's meaningful questions, like I'm trying to probe for answers, and then I would say my little boy is approaching 3. And a lot of what he does is not necessarily probing for answers. He's just continuing a conversation, and he knows the 3 or 4 question words that will get you to talk more.
Yeah.
And his question then it's not related back to what you've said.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to go to the doctors. Which doctors? There's only one doctor's.
Yeah.
Why are you? Which house is it? Why? When is the yogurt? And you're like, that's not so. Stuff like that where you go.
So then you ask questions back again and go, why do you want to know when is the yogurt?
Do you think?
My god!
Do you think that's what it is? Do you think it's the children hear their parents just exasperatedly going, why? So they go, that's what we all say.
Why did you do that? Why did you pour?
What are you doing?
All the food on the floor.
What is this about?
Why did you ask me for hot chocolate 3 times in a row and then just watch as you poured it into the soil?
Why are you doing it? Why are you doing that?
Why?
What is that about? Anyway, and then they go, well, I get asked a lot of questions. Let's see how you like it. But then, so the next bit of the article was kind of talking about how that takes an absolute nosedive once children...
Yes.
Now, what I thought was interesting was it says at 5 it goes down, but they haven't... If I was being a scientific researcher about it, I would say that they say at 5, between 5 and 6, it plummets down to... I can't remember the exact number, but I think everybody listening would say... would hopefully understand that it takes a nosedive, and they were placing the blame a little bit on school and saying that it's that shut up and learn, and this is the system of the day. And I would say it would be interesting to do that study, even if it's just I know social sciences are a bit of a soft science and they're harder to do, but to get a contingent of home educated children who have had no change between 4 and 6 and go, how has that changed? And to an extent, we have a little bit of that data because of our kindergarten runs up to 6.
Yeah.
And so we have some children.
Yeah, because it could just be, actually, by that time, they have grasped a lot of understanding about the world, so they don't need to ask as many questions.
Yeah.
But it might be that the fewer questions they ask are deeper, they're more rooted in, no, but I really want to get to the crux of this thing and understand it, as opposed to, as you're saying, there's kind of, but why? Where?
Yeah, just filling the void.
Yeah. They also done a study which concludes that the children that are more curious have better outcomes. They don't really...
They don't go into what the outcome is. They just go better.
They do go better, and but they're saying that the biggest... so they've studied in kindergarten. Interesting. Reading, maths, and behaviour were tested in kindergarten, and
Thank you, Michael Gay.
And the children that were more curious had better results in those fields, is what they're saying. But also the children from disadvantaged families who were more curious ended up with significantly better outcomes than those from disadvantaged families who weren't curious. So, and it gives an example of a school in Bristol which has got rid of all of their, it's a nursery, got rid of all of their toys and replaced them with open-ended loose parts and, cardboard boxes,
tubes, all that kind of stuff.
And observed the effect on play, which I have heard about that actually in other articles. I've seen that
absolutely
pop up here and there.
Yeah.
And it seems like that idea is catching on.
Well, I think that kind of the toys thing, I think, is almost separate to questioning and curiosity, because it's. I think we talked about it before near Christmas. We talked about it. We talked about deep and shallow play, and that just having boxes and toilet roll tubes and everything else forces deeper play, because you get over the shallow play of what does it do. Very quickly you go to toilet roll tube.
And you move to what could it do?
You want what could it do? What can I do with it? So I wouldn't say that necessarily changes the questioning that happens.
I guess it's internal questioning as well. So if you're including that, so curiosity, if you're just saying that rather than questioning, then that is definitely feeding curiosity, isn't it? You're looking at, as you say, deeper play, which is rooted in, what happens if I do this? Oh, hang on, you hold this and I'll hold this. What's going to happen? Which would fit under curiosity, which is really what this article is about, as opposed to just questioning.
And I think there's possibly, if I was coming at it from a play working angle, I would go that it's just giving children in that scenario a bit more time to process without lots of stimulating toys and lots of stimulating didactic lessons, stand at the front, do whatever, doesn't give you a lot of time to sit and digest and go whatever. But if you've got a toilet roll tube in front of you and some cardboard boxes, you're not dazzled by the fact that it's got LEDs and it's talking to you and it's whatever else, and you can go, well, I'm going to play through some of the stuff that happened this morning, or I'm going to play through something that happened to me last week at Granny's, and that is good. I think it's that maybe consolidation is the word, that I think that is going to be a large factor in improving outcomes in quotes is just consolidation. And consolidation, I think, gets used in education, and it just means repeating. Well,
we were talking about that this week, actually. That ties in neatly. We were leading a session this week or last week, and you just came up to me and you said, I've just... A penny's dropped.
Yeah.
I've just decided I'm going to imagine that none of these children have been here before. It's making today a lot easier. And as soon as you said that to me, and I adopted that too, I was like, oh yeah, it really does. Because you might take for granted that the consolidation has happened. These children have been here quite a few times in quite similar situations, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to take it for granted that they understand this concept, or they get this ground rule, or not that we have many, this safety thing, and then some days you just get a day where for whatever reason, it could be an internal reason, an external reason, factoring the weather, tiredness, it's been, the clocks have changed, whatever, all of that stuff that you thought was consolidated isn't, and so it often takes, even here where we don't have a rigid
no.
rash, we've got to learn these phonic sounds by this time. even here where it's a
that's
lot
what I've
more
been doing.
child-led.
Is that not what you've been doing?
Oh, crikey. Then it needs longer time.
Yeah.
Going back to also what you're saying about time, so the article gives an example of a lesson that's happening on the weather, and the teacher is at the front of the class with some pictures of clouds, and outside there's a thunderstorm, and the children keep asking questions about the thunderstorm, and the teacher goes, not time for questions now, it's time for learning. And actually the learning is happening out the window, and the curiosity, which it's basically, she's describing child-led education, isn't she, really? That kind of thing of like curiosity is what is child-led. And so the article's kind of saying, well, they're going to learn significantly more from engaging with the thing that's really happening that they are already interested in, rather than you going, back in the room, come on.
It talks a little bit about, what I was going to say is that I don't think it goes into detail enough of like, this article is essentially about love of learning and how you foster that versus how you squash that.
Yeah.
And in that example, they're talking about like, the thunderstorm outside, and she's saying, well, that's not the outcome that the lesson plan says, which is a product of schooling, is a product of state education. I'm not going to get on my soapbox. Maybe I'll get on my soapbox a bit later.
You already have.
But that is one of the things that comes with the ratios that you get in schools, is that you then go, okay, I've got to homogenise this group, because 30 free rein brains is a massive task. Not just behaviourally, but educationally.
That's what I've written. I've written as a note that curiosity is messy. It's like messy in every way. It chucks you off timetable. It takes more time. You can't plan for it. You can't plan.
And you can't assess it.
You can't assess
That's
it.
the thing.
And it's physically messy as well. It's going to lead you down all kinds of like spillages on the floor, tramping outside, like stuff getting broken or smashed, or I didn't quite intend you to
people
use the
feeling
felt tips
uncomfortable
like that. You're stuffing the felt tips into the paper and they're not meant to, it has the potential to squander resources.
It's not even directed in that. I have seen people teach in classes, and like we say, lots of education is on a spectrum, and you might see some. So I've seen some examples where people go, we're going to talk about, actually I did this as a teacher, let's put me in it. So we went, the topic this week is this half term is France, right? And then you get the kids to write down the questions, we'll stick them all on the board, and we'll see what we've done by the end of the half term.
What I want to know.
Yeah, that kind of bullshit, right? But what that doesn't account for is someone who has absolutely fuck all interest in France, and that it's on that spectrum. Yes, I have moved maybe one notch on the dial away from like, here's what you're going to learn about France. But if we take the scope of the world, the universe and everything, I haven't really moved the dial, have I? It's almost like a bit of theatre to go, the children have decided they're learning.
Because I can remember doing the same thing and walking around the class looking over the kids' shoulders at their books. This is secondary level. And it's
We're not doing your question. We're not doing your question, mate.
Well, no, not that. The start of the topic, like Shakespeare, always do it with Shakespeare. So, what do you already? Come on, let's mind map. If Barry,
he was bold.
What do we know about Shakespeare, and what would I like to know about Shakespeare? And so you go around to look at people's books, and if they haven't written anything for what would I like to know, which had definitely an acronym, wild, I don't know, or something like that.
Okay.
And if they haven't written anything, you said that to me.
I said it to you because you typed absolute gibberish to me. We have Gemma and I were doing some planning or something, and the message came up 3 in a row, and it had like semicolons in it and question marks, and I just thought, okay, she's gone. I'm running the business on my own now. This is it.
I was quite tired. Where was I? Yeah, if they hadn't written anything for what would I like to know, I'd be like, come on.
You must want to.
Write your answer. What would you like to know? Come on. There must be something. And like, back to your point, no, I have literally no interest, and I don't want to know anything really. I'd rather be outside.
So I think there's an interesting thing between your experience in secondary and my experience in primary, where I would say that by the time you're in secondary school, you've got a little bit more of a cultural radar.
Yeah.
In that you might know who Shakespeare is, but go, no, I'm not interested in it, right? But in primary school, and lots of forest school takes place in primary settings, there is genuinely a thing of like, you might have just gone, well, tell me what you know about Gobdigank.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so culturally off the radar that in a primary setting, there's a lot more that is just like, well, of course you're not going to be interested in this thing because you don't know anything about the thing, and that is different.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how we start our sessions with circle time and go round, and it's just a kind of like little icebreakery, nice get to know ya kind of moment of. But sometimes it will introduce like a theme that we might be doing that day, and so sometimes we'll ask a question like, "What's your favourite bird?" whatever, and I'm always slightly on edge in terms of those people who like. None of their time in the day is spent thinking about birds. So that's going to be like
That's 60% of my day.
It's kind of similar. I've just made that click.
Yeah.
I don't do it that often, but sometimes I think you say it can be like a species, or it can be like a bird that you know. Like maybe you've got a pet chicken, or it's a bird on telly, or something.
Yeah.
So that makes that softens it a bit.
That is my primary teacher coming out, where I go, I need to get you personally invested in this.
Yeah.
And like we say, you've got to meet them where they are on the journey.
Yeah.
And part of that is me assessing, like I'm sat there with a clipboard, but kind of judging, fuck. Just finding out where people are and where the group is, and going, there was somebody the other day who, we asked quite a big one.
Yeah.
About.
I was just about to say that, like, you're absolutely right that it kind of gives you a picture of where people are, doesn't it? So if somebody says, "Oh, a song thrush is my favourite bird because I've heard it recently doing its 3 repeated refrains," and so then you're like, "Oh, okay, cool, you already know that," or then you can also elicit information from them and go, "Okay, cool, tell us more about that," and share that with the group, and that's really nice that we're kind of collectively learning on a journey together, which I really like.
But there's also just to jump in, there's the part of the Coyote Guide, for anybody that's read the Coyote Guide, and their recommendation, or one of the things they say they do, is that after a morning circle and routine and sort of welcome, is that you engage the group with a personal story, which I think is part of what elicits questions and interest.
A personal story from your own thing.
So like we do it all the time. So when we go around the circle, sometimes we might say like, "Oh, favourite flower," right? Let's go round and we'll do favourite flower, because it can just be like whatever else. It's kind of non-committal. But we normally try and not normally. Sometimes it ends up that you've started, and because I'm sat next to you, it goes all the way around the circle, and the last person is me. And I get to talk about a flower that's in the woods, and I'm giving not just a personal like I was running and I was doing this thing. Then I'm going, it's over there if you want to go and see it, and I've made this personal connection and personal story and linked it into what we're doing, and that is sometimes a way in of going, if say woodland flowers are not on your radar at all. That's just not, like you're saying. How long do people spend thinking about birds? But if you get round the story and we go, the crows that live up there, they've been having a fight with the buzzards, and actually we were here the other day and they went crazy and they shouted that thing. It's a couple of minutes, but it immediately makes you go, that is here, that is an experience that we've had, and that then can get you into, which tree was it? Why do you think they were doing that? And what do you, I think there's something to be said for giving a little bit to elicit a lot back.
Definitely. I was going to put a question out to you and to the listeners too. Like, if we accept that curiosity is good and needs to be fostered, like, we would probably all acknowledge and agree. And I was trying to remember who it was that I read that said this, and it was Michael Follett from Mopar, who I often talk about. Talks about how questioning increases when you go outside, because there's just so much to ask questions about. You've got all that free time. Like, forest school it's fueled by curiosity, I would say. So we all accept that. But then I was going to ask, if we all accept that, what do we do to make sure that we are keeping that alive? So you can rest on your laurels and go, oh yeah, cool, curiosity will just like happen because we're outside and we're like great facilitators. But if you were going to have a bit of a drive, like maybe there were some kids who you noticed weren't really curious for whatever reason, weren't showing that, how do you help people to be curious?
Well, I think I've kind of answered that with a personal story because I would say for older children, so like our Saturday groups when they're a bit older, the curiosity doesn't necessarily naturally happen, and we have some children who have been before who their play is just social. They're not interested in the outdoor world, in the outside world. They're not interested in any kind of woodworking or whatever. Actually, what they want to do is play this game of like Army Boys, right? And that's their game.
It just so happens that the outdoors is a good
It
landscape
happens
for
to
that.
be that they're here.
Yeah.
They could be doing it on a paintball site. They could be doing it on a whatever, and that's a thing where you.
Could they though? I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Okay, but do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're not
Yeah.
in the same way, in a different way that you might go like, well, someone was very curious about these harlequin ladybirds, and we looked at them, and we looked at the larvae stage and all these things. It's a very different thing to like, cool, you came to a 2-hour session and you played castles and knights and, shot bows and arrows. You happen to be here, but it was more of a backdrop to your play than a fuel to your play. But then, how much stuff goes in subconsciously, how much of it is.
Well, that's what I was. As you were talking, I was like, I don't know. I'm sure there are instances where that's correct, but I would say, I would perhaps argue that if you were able to observe that play really closely without yourself being seen, so imagine
as I sometimes do.
behind a cameras up everywhere, lapel mics on all of the children.
Yes, long distance forest school.
Yes. Whether, because we talk a lot about like the environment being the third teacher, don't we? And I wonder whether you can truly say that there is any play that happens at forest school that is incidental to being in the woods, whether it's always going to be influenced by the surroundings and the weather and the stimuli that are there outside in the woods. So I would argue that you can't. It's very,
but maybe
very
it's a spectrum.
difficult.
Maybe it's with all things, it's a spectrum, and some play is very deeply fueled by the natural space, and some play is very shallowly.
And for each player, it's going to be different as well. So some are completely
in the same game.
Yeah, they're all in the same game.
Yeah,
and they're all completely immersed. But for some of those children, their responses and their play activity is going to be more influenced by what they're seeing, smelling, hearing around them in this natural space than others, whereas others will be, could be on a tarmac playground. Yeah. I was thinking about that game, I wasn't there, but you described it to me, which was that game of castles and tribes and all the rest of it, and then evolved into woodlouse habitat.
Oh, mental. If you had looked at it from a distance, there were some boys and they had set up a camp, and I was basically harassing them. Every now and again I'd try and sneak up, and they'd spot me and they'd go, "Lewis is coming," and they'd all chase me away.
Playing?
We were playing, yeah. And then after a little while, I just put my hands in the air and I'm just coming for a visit. I'm just a tourist. I came over, and in the base in quotes, they'd set up a woodlouse sanctuary, and they were there going, "Oh, do you want tickets to sit?" And we're just putting some water in, and we've got some dark leaves, and then I said, "Oh, well, they might want some punky wood." And they'd never heard of what punky wood was, so we went on a little explore.
Yeah.
And on the outside, you'd have looked at it and gone, right, they're boys. They've made a base, and now they're defending the base. And then inside it was this whole other microcosm.
Sanctuary.
It was crazy.
Oh, see, what is that if not the environment completely?
Oh, absolutely.
Fueling that and fueling the curiosity, and it will just be one part. I think it's hard to be curious, going back to kind of needs and anxiety. It's very hard to be curious if your levels of anxiety are high, you don't feel safe, or you're cold, or you're hungry, or whatever. It's one of those things that happens when you're feeling pretty okay. It's very hard. It's like a bit of your brain, I think.
Ooh.
I would say.
Okay, so then the question is, where is the difference between a curious question of, "Oh, what's over there?" and an anxious question of "what's over there?" And how, are they different things?
I'll tell you why I think they're different. Because I think what's over there is getting prepared for fight or flight.
Absolutely.
In which case, it is not. You're definitely going to learn something from that experience. Like, holy crap, it's a bear, and I'm scared, and I'm going to leg it. I'm going to poo my pants. Evacuate, puke and poo, and then run. Right.
That sounds like a plan that you've thought of before.
It is. That's what I do when I see a bear. But you can definitely learn from that, right?
I have learned
Yeah.
a lot from this.
However, if it's like, oh, what's over there? Then that's a question that is a beginning of a journey which will go, oh, it's this. And what happens when I interact with this thing? And I thought, and now I can do this with this
pull
thing.
myself.
And I won't pull myself. I don't need to. Okay? I keep it all in. It's fine. And then that leads to potentially, sometimes not, because you go, oh, it's that thing, I'm not interested in that thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to lead to a longer, if you talk about like deep play, focus, being, in the moment and in flow and all that kind of schmizzle, that's going to happen with the, oh, what's over there? Rather than the, oh shit, what's up?
Do you think that so we talked when we were talking to Tristan in the other podcast, we were saying about how do you not just like vomit out everything you know. So do you think that your response to direct questions that children ask you is a way that you can either fuel or stamp out questioning,
Definitely.
and
that is so tricky. That line is so hard, isn't it? In terms of like, depends on the age of the child, what they're, what you know about them and how their history of questioning.
and how deep your knowledge is.
Yeah,
because it
of
might be
course.
that they go, what is that? And you genuinely have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's have a look. Let's look it up together. Or,
Yeah.
And that's cool. I love those moments. But I agree that sometimes you take a step back and you go, well, I completely know the answer, but what's going to benefit them is me going, oh, this. They eat this. That's the answer.
It's a tree, man.
Or do you pretend you don't know and you go, oh, I don't know. What do you think? Let's have a look around. And you question them back again.
So there's is it called Aristotle questioning?
Yeah.
Or it's something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you just answer every question with a question, and they just go, "What is it?" And you go, "Oh, what do you think it is?" Or, "Oh, why is it doing that?" And you go, "Why do you think it's doing that?" Which is, if you do it too much, is like, okay, well, fuck you then. You're not a resource for anything. And I cannot remember. I need to look it up again. There's another thing where you basically. What's the word? Like verbalize your thought process.
Yeah.
So you would go, if I thought it was a pine tree, I'd be looking at the needles.
Yes.
And that is a bit like the personal story at the start. It's a bit of information to go on, but it in no way implies that, one, that you're right. It doesn't imply that you know what it is. And it also facilitates them to go find the answer on their own, which I think is really powerful to be able to, if they'll go, what is that bird? And you go, oh, well, I'd be looking at its neck shape and its wingspan if I was trying to work out what kind of, whether it was a bird of prey or not. And they can go, oh, well, I'd be doing that and that. But that's a thing that you, as a leader, you have to practice doing yourself.
I was going to say
to not just be like, it's a ladybird. Why? How do you know it's a lady? And then if you try and go, how do I know it's a ladybird? And you go, because it's a ladybird.
Yeah, because that method of answering the question is not only helping that person with the answer, but helping them how to find it out next time for themselves.
Yeah.
I really like that.
And that's the thing.
I think we've done that a lot before.
We have.
And maybe have forgotten to do it quite so much recently.
I think with different children, you take a different approach, and sometimes, it's one of those like sixth sense teaching things that you go, you just need a short answer right now, or you go, this might be where you take the 2-hour session. So I'm going to give you a different answer, and that will change on the child, that will change on the weather, that will change on everything.
Sometimes you get those moments where you're like, oh my god, I've got a big responsibility here for these children and they're learning. And what you've just said just made me think of that in terms of like how you answer a question will direct the flow of that entire session, because you either fuel that curiosity or you kill it. It's like, they've asked me a question, if I answer this in the right way, we could, as you say, spend a 2-hour journey together, bringing more people in with us as we go, probably because they'll just pick up on our enthusiasm and our journey. And there's a lot of this kind of, I love those moments where you get both us and the kids go, hey guys, come and look at this, hey guys, that moment, and everyone goes, oh, what have they found, or you answer the question in such a way that's like, oh, okay.
Well, this is where I think, and I would imagine a lot of forest school leaders feel the same, is where I just want to be able to, if I could learn a skill, I would learn mitosis, which I know that you do on a small scale. But what I want to be able to do is when someone goes, why is the thing over here, right? I don't want to have to, which you do sometimes, have to give the answer of, I'm just doing knife work with these guys right now. I'll be with you in a minute. I just want to be able to go...
Yeah.
And there'll be another Lewis who can go and explore that tangent.
Absolutely.
And then someone else is going, we're going to go and build this. And I'm like, yeah, we are.
Yeah.
And there's another me going over and doing that. And it's
Yeah.
just the frustration of like, I wish I could do all of these things.
Yeah.
Which is not a thing that you say about many jobs.
No.
On reflection, there's not many jobs where you go,
I want to do more things.
I wish in a 2-hour session I could do 8 hours of work.
Yeah.
I really do, and I genuinely
But
would
then
love
that is
to
the
do
benefit, as we always say, of there being two of us and working together with one person for a long period of time. I would say we're approaching that stage in terms of like, I will say to a kid, I can't do that right now, but I know Lucy would be interested in that, so go and find him and blah, blah, blah. And I'll know that you will there. You know.
Did you know another kid fobbed you off with a job yesterday?
What, when?
And I went and said, can you just go and check that she's okay with that? Because someone had picked up on you and I going, oh, I'm just doing this right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure Gemma will be able to do that for you.
Yeah.
And 2 children were making bows.
Yeah.
And one child said to an older, so it was a smaller child, said to one of the bigger children, can you help me put the string on my bow?
Yeah.
And he walked straight past them and he went, Gemma will do it for you. And I just stopped him and I went, can you just go and ask if Gemma's not busy? Because you've just fobbed her off with a job now that she doesn't know is happening. But I thought that was very interesting that he had maybe picked up on you and I saying that, like, oh, I'm just doing this right now.
Yeah.
Go and see the other one.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, look at that raven.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's a raven because I'm like, holy moly, that is an enormous catbird.
It's massive. And it's because we're in the cabin, you see. It's like a good bird hide here. And it's just on the muddy path, looking around, checking it out.
See, guys, even when we're not outside, we can still distract you with birds you can't see.
Yeah.
It is enormous. They have been shouting and shouting and shouting today. Sorry, going back to, mildly, bring it back to this article that in theory we're discussing, is obviously they're talking about their book.
Yeah.
And it's how did you... Well, I can't remember what the title of it is, but it's like how children succeed.
How to succeed at school. What every parent should know.
No.
I love the type of books like that. I bought one. I got suckered in. No, I hate them. But I got suckered in with a very similarly titled book. And it's like, here's what you need to know about schools. Like, here's the truth. And so this is like, now that you know that, you're really empowered. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm only empowered if I decide that I'm going to remove my child from that institution. And that's it. I can kind of... you know, join the PTA and the ethos committee, which I'm on for both of those things for my school, and I just sit there quietly until I go and information bursts out of my mouth, and it's all good. But anyway, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Well, I just think I was sort of speculating on what I thought might be in the book and who the book would be. I know it says for parents, but sometimes that's not necessarily, you know, what it says is not necessarily who it is actually for. And I was just thinking about, like, you know, if you were going to write one for Forest School, if you were going to write it from a curiosity standpoint.
Curiosity approach.
No, not the curiosity approach. No, a million times no. But if you were going to write, you know, how do you foster the most curious group possible at Forest School?
Yeah.
What things would you say to a leader?
I think we put that out to our listeners, you know. Let's chat about it. Let's chat about it on the internet. I don't know. I just asked you that question, basically. You were like, yeah, we've just been talking about it.
Well, we have. And then I think, in terms of, because there's so many components to it, that I think, you know, there's all your interactions is one. There's the natural world is another that gives you lots of other things. And then there's another thing of, like, ethos, I guess, widely, and, like, how you react to questioning or to tangents informs how other children... Because they're saying this thing in school where the questions go straight down when they hit school. Yeah. And that won't be because every child individually has had enough experiences of being told that their question isn't valid. It will be a perceived ethos where they've seen enough of their friends touch the fire, if you like, to go, I don't touch the fire because Mrs. Smith shouts at the children who put their hand up at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in forest school, I think you get the opposite where if nothing but for show, you need to validate every question. And, you know, even if you do go, oh, I will be with you in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So that the whole group knows that's a thing that we can do. That is part of the learning. And I had a really good tip once. So a lot of forest school was based around reflection and stuff. And I can't remember where it was. Oh, I do know. It was teacher training I went on. And they said, when children give you an answer to write up on the board for whatever it is, and they said, how demeaning is it to reword what a child has said to you?
Yeah.
And that actually getting it down verbatim is empowering and validating and just kind of going like, okay, I will take exactly what you've said and I will put it on the board. You know, for like, guys, what do you want to have a look at next week? And they go, the ladybird things with their wings. And you go, right, the ladybird things with their wings, right? So that, again, nobody sat round the circle is thinking, oh, I want to say about doing that next week, but I'm not quite sure how to say it because Lewis is going to make it, he's going to change it and make it in the right way.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, not ideal, is it?
Yeah. I would add on to that you can't really, like a bit like we were saying about working in schools, you can't force curiosity. So I remember we experimented with different ways of reflecting, haven't we, with different groups, and we played about with the dice at one time.
They do, yeah.
And each facet of the dice has a different word, like played,
enjoyed, challenging,
and one of them was question. And so you threw the dice and whenever anyone got that, they found it impossible to come up with a question or to remember a question that they'd had in the session. It's a great idea in principle, but you can't force it. You can't go, everyone now, be curious about something, or remember a time you were curious today. So it's kind of up to you, I think, as a leader to somehow log those in a way. Wouldn't that be cool? To like, throughout the day, that's a challenge.
What's that?
Kind of like log the curious moments in some way.
And
when they happen, what kind of questions are happening, whether it is an actual, whether it comes out as a question.
ABC it.
Yeah.
Antecedent, behaviour, consequence. What did you do before?
Yeah.
How was the question asked, and then what did you do as a consequence of the question?
Curiosity survey, even the things that weren't successful. So even log the times where somebody asked you a question and you went, I can't do that right now because I'm using that.
Here's the challenge. In the Facebook group, I'm going to make a little template and I'm going to put it in, and if you've got 5 minutes, print it out and do 5 minutes in your group of just going, right, I'm going to observe in this specific way, because I would love to see it come back and to see what questions were asked, and then also we could get this massive bit of like, oh, and I did this with it. And one of the things I was going to say, and I think Forest School has it in droves, that school doesn't, is like a can-do attitude in response to curiosity. So there are very few things that you would go, we just, short of someone going, oh, can I forge my own axe? And you would go,
could I drive this knife into my own finger just to see what colour my blood is? Can I put my hand in the fire?
Sure.
What happens when I shove little Tim Tom off the edge of the cliff?
Can do. But what I actually meant in a non-facetious way was that even if you...
I'm just thinking...
You just be...
What happens if I throw the rock at Freddy's head? What happens when I ram the stick in my eye? Actually, I have actually had that. Well, I have had a kid basically go, what happens if I ram the stick in my eye? Ow, this happens. But I'm just going to try it again to make sure that the same thing happens twice.
Because he hadn't consolidated. That eye sticks in the eye.
Have you got any personal moments like that? Because I freaking have, right? When I was a kid, I got to, in the olden times, the dinosaurs, when I was a tiny little thing.
You can stop listening if you want to now. This is just personal therapy for Gemma at this point.
In the olden days, camera, SLR camera, no digital business.
Right.
A flash, big rectangular thing about the size of your hand. Screw it on the top. And I was like, what will happen if I get that flash and I put it in front of my eyes, pointing towards my eyes, and then press the button on the top with my eyes really wide open. Like, I'm really curious about that. Did it and then couldn't see for 5 minutes. And my mum thinks she's blind. Oh yeah, I had another one about wet paint. My dad painting all of the edges around doors with gloss paint, and he went, "Don't touch the paint, it's wet."
Well, of course you can touch it.
Of course you're going to touch the paint. But he just will still tell that story. Probably, on my whatever birthday, he'll still be like, "I remember the time. La, 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 la." Got any stories?
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. I was actually going to say a very positive thing about Forest School,
Yeah.
which is that if you are curious of how do we get across there, even if we don't have the perfect board, it's like a make do and mend, cobble this together. Right, we don't have that. Or we don't have a piece of rope that's long enough to get from there to there. Maybe we can do that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, it's problem solving in response to curiosity rather than putting it down and going, we're not in art right now. We're not in science right now. Or that's a thing that we do at break time, not a thing that we do,
I've thought of another thing that we do, which is to model being curious. I think I do that, the thinking out loud thing. I think I quite often go out loud, I wonder what will happen if I just use the paintbrush like this instead. I wonder what I'm going to find out what will happen if I use a stick. I think I do that out loud, and I probably sound mad.
Yeah. But then that is a level that we've talked about before, where you have to remember with some groups that because you rarely get, the way that our business runs, you rarely get a complete clean slate, new group, nobody has been in the woods before. It's always half the people are on their rolling membership, and so there's some new people, but there's some older people, and there's some whatever else. And that means that we spiral, if you like, into deeper and deeper exploration to the point where it wasn't long ago, it was a couple of months ago actually, that I realised there was a child who'd been coming to our Saturday group for 6 months and had never made a fire because I personally had moved on from making fires into how do we make the char cloth, how do we make the thing, and you have to remember to sort of unwind and go, I've got to meet you on your journey.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really helpful to verbalise your own curiosity, and sometimes it's, going back to what we were saying about earlier about Shakespeare, if it's so far out of the context that you suddenly went, I wonder what the buzzards are decorating their nests with this year. That's a level where we've gone, I can identify buzzards, I know where the buzzards' nests are, I know that they do decorate them with different things every year, I know that this and this and this. And so sometimes that's really it can be almost aspirational because you go, look, there's so much depth to this. Let me show you what I'm curious about. And it's good to see the curiosity, good for children to see us being curious. But on the flip side, they can also be quite alienated by what we're curious about because they don't have the depth that we have.
Yeah.
And that can be a thing where you have to go, right, well, let's foster the curiosity and get it where you want, meet you on your journey. Let's not just go, well, X person is interested in where the bees are gonna, pollinate this year, so that's what the group's gonna do. It's a really tricky thing to balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
That depth. And that's the thing that they're talking about here in a class where, the teacher has got a directed outcome and a learning outcome.
Yeah.
But you have at least got a cohort of children who are a reasonably similar age, who will have reasonably similar experiences because they live in the same area, and they have, there's going to be class differences and things like that, but to a large extent you could go, look, Egyptians hasn't been on the curriculum yet, so I'm fairly sure none of them will have this massive depth. But Forest School, you've got to be able to accommodate somebody whose mum is a bat survey, head of whatever, and somebody who is bringing their kid for the first time because they think, we're a bit squeamish about mud.
Yeah.
That's a huge ask for Forest School teachers, isn't it? To be able to go, you've got to accommodate all this curiosity.
But what I love about it is that is fine. So you aren't a teacher, you are part of a group that's going on a learning journey together. Not you, but one. And it's a learning community. So rather than feeling, oh God, if somebody knows more about bats than me, that's really going to show me up and I'm supposed to be the expert, you can quite openly go, do you know what, I know nothing about bats, can you please tell us about bats? Would you be happy to talk about bats right now? And open it up, and it's got that kind of feeling that if somebody knows, you know, how to cook a certain thing, they will feel comfortable enough to go, do you know what, I actually know how to cook that thing, do you want me to lead that next week? And you go, absolutely cool, that is the vibe of it, that nobody is putting themselves up as the expert on everything in the world. There are moments where you might happen to know more than somebody else about a natural thing or play theory or whatever, and you can share that and they might be interested in it, that's cool. But there will be times where it follows the interests of the group, whatever that might be, which is what I love about it.
I think there's a good thing. I think we've talked this article to death. I will put the ABC, but maybe in the show notes.
Maybe it's not ABC, maybe it's like antecedent, curiosity moment, and then consequence, because
ACC.
I would leave it up to you as a facilitator to decide what the curiosity moment is, because some children won't be verbal about that. It doesn't have to necessarily be a question. It's a bit of a woolly grey area.
What is this? I heard myself.
You can tell, can't you? You can tell if a child is like in a
Yeah, or it might just even be more eye contact. We've got some children who are very physically reserved and will stand no more than 6 inches away from you the whole time. But if you tune in and go, I'm going to see what you're curious about, you might have to do it by, what are you looking at? Or what have you turned your body towards?
Yeah. Or is the behaviour, the physical behaviour, like pouring water down a chute or lifting up a rock, is that behaviour that you've seen the kid do lots of times before, so it's just a thing that they always do? Or is it like a new thing and you can see there's a kind of moment of curiosity there? Do you know what I mean? There's like a difference, I reckon you could probably distinguish between.
Yeah, it's just occurred to me that a curiosity, do you think curiosity naturally comes with caveat that it may be fleeting in a way that interest doesn't? If you have an interest in something, that is a sustained focus or spotlight on an area, whereas curiosity, the word implies this might not last. Yeah, it might not even get to a verbal question. Yeah, it might just be. Here's a slight. I know we said we were finished. Here's a slight thing. Do you have my wife asked me the other day, do you have an internal monologue? And I said, what are you on about? And she said, when I'm stood doing the washing up, in her head, her thoughts are like a novel. So she has she in full hears herself in her head go, I wonder what Lewis is going to do, and maybe we'll have that for breakfast. And then, actually, I wonder if I need to cut the potatoes up for dinner. And I was like, no, I absolutely don't have that.
I don't know.
The thought is just ethereal. Yeah. It's not like an audiobook in my head. She was like, oh, it's an audiobook in my head all the time. So that's absolutely knackering. Do you...
I would say sometimes I'm aware of it and sometimes I'm not. And you know when you're aware of it, when you say it out loud when you're by yourself. So I was driving in the car, I bet you do. I was driving the car the other day and I was listening. So I've got a guilty secret that when I leave work, my radio is trained Radio 2. And so I end up listening to
old.
Radio 2 in the afternoon. Oh my God. With, what's his name? Today our phone-in subjects are eggs and elephants. Should they be banned? That guy. And he was interviewing Jay Rayner, and it turned out that Jay Rayner is Claire Rayner's son. And I did not know that. You don't even know who either of these people are. But Claire Rayner was on telly and used to talk about sex education a lot. And Jay Rayner was on MasterChef, and he's like a restaurant critic. Okay. But I was so dumbfounded by this idea that out loud by myself I was like, what? Oh my God, Jay Rayner is Claire Rayner's son. Squirrels. And I said that out loud and I thought that was quite weird. Lewis can hear a tractor.
I can hear a tractor. Very, very close.
It's probably just in the field there. It's probably about to start muck spreading.
Yay!
No, it's home time.
It is home time.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye, guys.